Welcome to the Living Loud and Proud podcast, brought to you by Disability Pride, Pennsylvania. If you need a link to the transcript for this episode, please visit our accessible website at www.disabilitypridepa.org/podcast. And now, here is your host.
Hey folks, welcome to the Living Loud and Proud podcast. It's season 3 already. I can't believe it. It's been 3 years. I'm your host, Phill Rosen. Today's episode is the Mutual Aid Manifesto, Disability Activism Support in America. I was thinking about this, from the beginning of this year, given just a lot of things that have been going on lately, and just how important it is for us to be supporting the most vulnerable communities in our country and state to be able to help them thrive. And mutual aid is part of that, puzzle. So I wanted to talk about what it means for the disability community, both in history and currently, and what we can do to help support each other and help lift each other up. So you might ask, hey Phil, what is mutual aid? Well, according to Victoria Mendez, mutual aid is about cooperating to serve community members. Mutual aid creates networks of care and generosity to meet the immediate needs of our neighbors. It also addresses the root causes of challenges we face and demands transformative change. That is just such a powerful quote. So what does that really mean? Well, it means that mutual aid helps to deliver the resources and help to communities and individuals who are traditionally underserved by current supply chains that we have in place. It partially challenges the systemic inequalities present in our society and provides a community that wouldn't be served in our current economic model with necessary resources to have a thriving, productive life. These communities are overlooked by business leaders due to a lack of ability to profit from serving them. So, when you think about it, mutual aid organizations are there to help try and remove a profit motive to help people who may not be able to afford it, if they were left to their own devices, and just generally speaking, help to bridge the gap where it would otherwise be unprofitable. Mutual aid's been getting a lot more attention recently because just the economic conditions are getting really, really difficult for so many people to keep up. High inflation, wages are not keeping up, everything's just getting much, much more difficult for individuals to be able to keep their head above water. But I want to take a step back and say that there are so many things that, we pay attention to because they become such big things in the moment, but they've often been around for a long time, and collective self-reliance is no different. It's been central to communities of color since at least the late 18th century, and you might be wondering why. Well, Phil, what was going on? Why was this happening? Well, I want to take you back to the late 1700s, 1780s, and 90s. And what was going on? Well, America declared independence and fought the Revolutionary War, won it, and got its independence from Britain as a result. In conjunction with this, especially in the North, many African Americans were being freed. And this created a situation where a lot of people who had up until now been denied access to wealth creation and, banks and social safety nets were still being denied these critical resources to be able to survive on their own in this country, this fledgling country. And in response to this adversity, money was pooled amongst the community members to buy farms and land, to care for children and the sick and disability community, and just the entire community as a whole. And much like what you might see with a collective bargaining agreement with like a union, there was a lot of power amongst the community in pooling the resources so that everyone could get a little bit of a piece of this newfound freedom and wealth that they were being given access to. Let's fast forward a little bit to the late 19th century. And at this time, what was happening was many anti-immigration laws, specifically targeting Asian immigrants, were being lifted. And this change in legislation created a wave of Chinese immigration to America. Mutual aid societies called Huaiguan were formed to represent and protect people from many different regions and dialects in China. Huaiguan provided temporary housing, financial assistance, and support to find employment, and also provided a group that was heavily discriminated against in this country a means to combat anti-Chinese sentiment in their communities that they were moving to here in America. And if we fast forward a little bit more to the 1950s, Native Americans created community centers to advocate for indigenous rights and protect Native resources after the government terminated the recognition of more than 100 tribes. And 10 years or so later, in the 1960s, organizations such as the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords exposed racial inequities by building care and resource distribution centers. How did they do this? Well, the Black Panther Party, for instance, created free health clinics and provided community survival through other programs as well, such as like free breakfast programs and the like. And this was to try and help uplift these communities that were getting another lift up because, well, what happened in the 1960s, the Civil Rights Act was passed and signed into law. And there were so many different things that were moving forward socially in this country as a result of that. Unfortunately, racism is one of those things that, is very hard to kind of break the cycle of societally. So this became a very necessary thing to help uplift people who, still were being denied access, to property ownership and wealth and all that kind of stuff through all sorts of different government programs. And you might be asking, like, so great, there's all these different things that, happened here in America. What are some of the advantages? Well, if it wasn't already apparent through what we just talked about, some of the advantages to mutual aid networks, probably the biggest advantage is the removal of a profit motive to provide goods and services to entire communities. This can make organizations and individuals providing mutual aid much more nimble than a large business that has a desire or need to review profit margins and make sure that there will not be a loss of profits to provide the same level of resources or services to a community. One example of an organization that I came across while I was doing research is Imagine Waterworks. It is a mutual aid organization focused on climate and social justice based in Louisiana. They launched the Trans Clippers Project after requests for haircuts were made by trans and non-binary individuals in their community. And the reason why they were able to do this so quickly was because they didn't have to go through creating a study and all those things. And they were just like, yeah, of course, we want to make people's lives a little bit better. And these people needed these things to feel better and feel good about themselves. Another big advantage to a mutual aid network is the building of solidarity and community amongst people who would otherwise be left to their own means to provide for themselves and their families. It allows individuals who would otherwise be left to their own devices to advocate for change on a larger scale than just within their familial and friend networks. They can give a mouthpiece for their needs. And a lot of people who are more impoverished or more vulnerable in society don't really necessarily have the time to advocate for themselves anyways. I mean, they have multiple jobs to work, right? To just pay the bills, get food on the table, whatever. There are some drawbacks as well to mutual aid networks. Probably the biggest one is it can take a while for a mutual aid network to form, just because many organizations rely on the generosity of individual donors to fund the providing of services and goods to the community at large. Also, just kind of reaching out and finding people who will help provide these services either at a cost or, being able to provide it at a scale that, would be fully needed within the community can also be a little bit challenging because resources are limited, just limited funding and whatnot. So you're probably listening to all of these examples that I've been putting together and you're like, so mutual aid has been integral to helping advance racial equality and trans rights in this country at large. What about the disability community? And that's a fair question. I haven't really talked about that too much yet, but I want to kind of touch on that right now. So within the disability community in history, one of the maybe biggest examples that I could find was the 504 sit-in. Don't worry, we will talk about this in a future episode of the podcast, probably maybe next year, since it will be the 50th anniversary next year. But so what was the 504 sit-in? It was a disability rights protest beginning in April 5th, 1977. The disability community occupied federal buildings in the U.S. to push the issuance of regulations regarding Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which at that time had been the most important disability rights and broadest, really, disability rights legislation in U.S. history. The two most noteworthy protests occurred in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco, although, like I said, they happened in cities all over the country. And what were some of the examples of mutual aid within the protest? Well, let me touch upon that now. So, Kitty Cohn and Judy Heumann built networks among activists for other causes and organizations. Some of the organizations that they had cultivated relationships with included the Black Panther Party, Glide Memorial Church, the Gay Men's Butterfly Brigade, Delancey Street, United Farm Workers, and the Gray Panthers. The Black Panther Party especially was integral to the protests that were being held inside the federal building at 50 United Nations Plaza. They provided hot meals daily in support of fellow Panther Bradley Lomax and his assistant Chuck Jackson. Corbett O'Toole wrote about this in her book Fading Scars, My Queer Disability History, writing, "Without the presence of Brad Lomax and Chuck Jackson, the Black Panthers would not have fed the 504 participants occupying the HEW building. Without that food, the sit-in would have collapsed." There also were daily vigils that were being held outside the building, helping to keep public visibility of the protests that were occurring inside the building and to keep up morale for those inside the building. Massively important thing when you're taking a stand for something through civil disobedience is that morale needs to stay up. The occupation of the building lasted 26 days, and in no small part, these hot meals definitely help to provide that boost for people to end up continuing on with it. Something else that happened during those 26 days was, well, with the disability community, many individuals have medical needs that require special attention, right? And so many of these individuals who participated packed only a toothbrush and their necessary medications for the time that they were going to be in there. With an occupation that lasts 26 days, there's a lot of complications when it comes to the disability community when it comes to their medical needs, right? Many people have specialized needs that require attention, such as eating and taking medications at regular hours and being turned at regular intervals to avoid pressure sores. Most had entered without their caretakers, so they had to turn to their fellow occupiers to assist in these tasks of daily living. For instance, one example of this would be blind individuals becoming attendants to quadriplegics to help avoid pressure sores. They would turn them or reorient them in their chairs. And the quadriplegics would read printed information in turn to the blind individuals that were protesting. This created this sort of self-reinforcing loop, and many individuals ended up learning a lot about other disabilities through this. Very important for solidarity within the disability community, because every disabled individual has their own story, has their own experiences. And sure, any condition, there's a lot of things that are similar, but it can help individuals who don't experience that disability to learn a little bit more about a different disability and understand a little bit better about what their needs are. So, great. This happened like 50 years ago. What are some, more recent examples of organizations and more recent sorts of mutual aid that you might find, here today, say in Pennsylvania? Well, one example of this would be the RevUp coalition. And the coalition is a national organization in the U.S. providing support and education to disabled individuals about their voting rights. This organization helps individuals register to vote and gives meaningful, up-to-date information on the rights of every individual voter to vote in the U.S. with whatever their needs may be. They help to educate the disability community on, if you say need someone to help you fill out your ballot, what does that look like? Or do you need someone to drop off your mail-in ballot somewhere? There's also rules for that, and they can give you all of the information that you might need if you are interested in voting. You really should vote anyways. These issues that we vote on affect us all. Another organization that's more local to Philadelphia is the ARC of Philadelphia and SpArc Philly. The ARC of Philadelphia is one of several ARCs across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. These organizations provide resources and education to people with disabilities and their families to help individuals live independent, full lives through employment training and job placement assistance, home and community-based services, and cultural arts programs. So they can help the disability community and individuals within the community to get a job. If they need help with finding an apartment or a house to live in, they can help with that. If you need like a home care attendant, they can help you connect with those resources. And they also allow individuals who want to express themselves in a more creative way access to the arts, visual media, painting, writing, music, whatever you might want. And, another organization that is here in Philly is Liberty Resources Incorporated. And Liberty Resources is a center for independent living in Philadelphia, one of many throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it provides home and community-based services for individuals with disabilities in the Philadelphia region. Again, similar to ARC of Philadelphia, this includes assistance with housing, home care services, and they also put on accessible events for members of the community that they serve. So, that's great. And maybe it's obvious to many of you why mutual aid is needed for the disability community at large. But for those who might not really understand it, one of the big reasons why this is so important is many people within the disability community are experiencing different things. The disability community cuts through basically every other demographic of marginalized person in the world. Many disabled individuals in the U.S. often don't have a lot of access to financial resources, so they end up relying on government programs to be able to survive. Things like, housing benefits or SNAP benefits for food, SSDI for income, LIHEAP, which I believe is for like heating and electricity assistance. So we end up providing a lot of these services through mutual aid so that people can have healthier, happier lives along with the government services. Also, being on these government services is a full-time job unto itself, and it can be helpful to have someone else to help guide you through the process. This is really important to keep people from being institutionalized, which historically has not been great for the disability community. And so you're probably hearing all this and you're thinking, well, what can I do to help? What can I do, Phil? Well, mutual aid networks, take many individuals and organizations working collectively to support individuals from vulnerable groups, by providing access to resources and services for low or no cost. So you can get involved. And there's a lot of ways for you to get involved too. You can help your community members independently or with other individuals and or within an organization. So what would that look like? Well, maybe, you have a little bit of money and time and you have a disabled friend or neighbor who, maybe needs a little bit of help getting groceries. Go get them some groceries. Or you can assist someone to vote. You can also cook meals or otherwise help a disabled friend or neighbor with chores around their home. You can also volunteer with a mutual aid organization. And many charities and aid organizations are in constant need of people willing to give their time to help support the population they serve. So, if you have the time and the resources to be able to help, whether it's a soup kitchen or, with an organization that's like helping register people to vote or whatever it may be, you should get involved if you want. And if you have the resources to be able to do so, making a donation to an organization is a good way to help support individuals as well. Nearly all mutual aid organizations are nonprofits, and many are 501c3s, which in America means that the donations can be tax deductible 100%. The only thing that I would caution you is to make sure that you do your homework on the organizations that you're looking to donate to. Some organizations don't provide the help that fosters like true independence for the community that they serve. and sometimes they don't necessarily use the resources in a very efficient manner to help those that need it the most. One thing you can do to try and figure this out is by looking at their financial statements. And, you know, you just got to look at, like, you know, where's the money going to? What are they using it for? How much of it is going where? That kind of stuff. You should also look at their website and other promotional materials to help get a better sense of what your money might really be getting put towards. And like I said, there are several organizations that use emotional appeals to try and get donations from people. But remember, they may not truly have the community's best interests in mind. So that's a little bit about mutual aid organizations. And I find it really important to be talking about this, especially right now, given everything that's been happening recently, you know, the way the economy has been going, some of the other things that have been happening as well. And I just want to encourage people to get out and do what they, what they can to help others in this time. You know, we really have some difficulty with creating community in this country as a whole. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do right now is when everyone's kind of going through it, supporting each other. Because at the end of the day, that helps to strengthen our bonds. And it helps to, you know, make people a little bit more friendly towards each other as a whole. So, again, this was our podcast all about mutual aid. Thanks for listening to the Living Loud and Proud podcast. Again, I'm your host, Phill Rosen. I will see you here next time.
Please visit our accessible website at www.disabilitypridepa.org. You can find us on social media at Disability Pride PA on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.